In this video, I'm going to talk about fractions that don't have a common denominator. This will be most common, right? If you already have a common denominator, that's going to be like the most basic level problem that we're going to do. But we're going to say, what if they don't have a common denominator? That's what you're going to have to do most of the time. So when I'm looking at the denominators, on this side I have an x, on this side I have a 2x. That's close, but it's not the same. So I have to make sure that the denominators are the same, which means they already both have an x. I don't have to worry about that part, but this side, my first fraction, needs a number 2 to go on the bottom as well. And I'm multiplying by that 2 because 2x means multiply by 2. Now, just like we talked about in the previous video, if I do something to the bottom of a fraction, I have to do the same thing to the top because I'm keeping it balanced. So because I multiplied by 2 on the bottom, I also have to multiply by 2 on the top. Now, this fraction, something happened to it, so I'm going to rewrite this fraction and I'm going to simplify anything that I can. So a 2 times 1 makes 2. Then when I do 2 times x, it makes 2x. I have a plus sign, and then for this second fraction, I didn't do anything to it. I had an x and a minus 1. Now, even though this has parentheses here, those parentheses are just saying that x minus 1 is a unit. They kind of go together and can't really be separated from each other. But because there's nothing else on the top of this fraction, I'm going to take off those parentheses. So that's something we're going to have to work on in this unit, is thinking about when the parentheses are there for a reason and when they're just there to show us that it's a unit. Over 2x. So this second fraction I just wrote exactly like it was. I didn't need to make any changes to it. And so that's that. Now we can do what we did in the previous video. I look at my denominator and I notice that they are a common denominator, right? I have the same thing on the bottom of both. And so now that I have the same thing on the bottom of both, I can combine my fractions into one fraction. The denominator stays the same as it was, 2x, and then I can combine things on the top. I have nothing that can combine with the letter x, so I'm going to leave that, but I can do a 2 plus a negative 1 makes the number 1. So my answer is right here, x plus 1 over 2x. I can't cancel out the x's because the top one is not just an x plus 1. So that is my answer. There's nothing else I can simplify. But the problem is I still have something that can't go on the bottom, so I have to do an excluded value. Just like I did in the last chapter, on the bottom of a fraction, I can't have 0. To get x by itself, I would divide by 2, and so I would have to say in this case that x cannot be 0. So that's my excluded value. And in this case, there's only one thing on the bottom, so I only have one excluded value. All right, next one. I'm adding, so I have to find a common denominator. These two denominators have something in common, but they are not a common denominator. They don't have the exact same thing, so I have to make it so that they do. This one has an x plus 1, this one also has an x plus 1, so that part they already have in common. This one has an x minus 2, and this one doesn't. So that's my job to put in x minus 2, and now the denominators match. The thing is, for a fraction, I have to keep it balanced. So if I did something on the bottom, I also have to do it on the top. And now I can simplify, I can do anything on the top. The thing I see here to do is I have an x times another x. That's making an x squared. And I have an x times a minus 2. That's making minus 2x. So I'm distributing up here because I'm doing multiplication. On the bottom, I have an x minus 2, and I have an x plus 1. And I have my plus sign. On this fraction, I didn't do anything to it, so I'm writing it exactly like it was. Ooh, that's a minus 2. And now my denominators match, right? I have a common denominator. on both fractions. So my denominator stays as the common denominator, x minus 2, x plus 1. And then I combine the things that I can on the top. I can't combine anything with an x squared, so it's just going to stay there. I can't combine anything with a minus 2x, so it stays there. And I can't combine anything with a positive 4, so it stays there. So this part is my answer. And then I have 2 excluded values. If you like to write the equations for excluded values, that's great. You would write 2 equations and you would solve them. Otherwise, if you can do it without writing the equations, that's fine. So x cannot be 2, and x cannot be negative 1. Those are my excluded values. Okay, 2 more problems to do together. I will still talk through them, but I might go a little bit faster. And then you're going to have some problems that you try on your own without a video. All right, looking at the bottoms of my fractions, they are not the same. They have something that matches, but they're not the same. So on this part I have an x, on this part I also have an x. So I'm going to not add that part, but this side has a 3x plus 2 and this side doesn't. So I'm going to make a 3x plus 2 on this side, but because I did it on the bottom, I also have to do it on the top. And now this part has a 3x plus 2, it also has an x, it also has an x minus 3. This part has the x and the 3x plus 2, it needs the x minus 3, and so I have to put it on both the top and the bottom. This time both of my fractions are changing. Even though the things are in the different orders on the bottom, they match now, and so I'm going to write them so they're in the same order. You don't have to, but they do have to have all the same parts. I have a plus sign in between them, and then I'm going to do my distributing on the top. I have a 3x times another 3x. That makes 9x squared. I have a 3x times a 2. That makes a positive 6x. Right there I have x times x, or x squared. And I have x times negative 3, which would be negative 3x. Now, since the denominators are the same, right, I have a common denominator here and here. Even if they were in a different order, as long as they have the same parts, my denominator is going to stay the same. X, 3x plus 2, and x minus 3. And now I'm going to combine. I have a 9x squared plus another x squared. That makes 10x squared. I have a 6x plus a negative 3x. That would make positive 3x. So I could leave my answer like this. If you leave your answer like this, I am totally fine with that. Now, I do want to show you, though, that this technically could be simplified. So I'm just going to show you if you're ready for it, right? On the top of this fraction, they have a letter x in common. So I could say x parentheses 10x plus 3. All I did was factor out a letter x. Then on the bottom, I have an x. I have a 3x plus 2. And I have an x minus 3. So think about the chapter that we just did. We have an x on the top, we have an x on the bottom. Those can cancel out. And so I could say I have a 10x plus 3 on the top. And on the bottom, I have a 3x plus 2. And I have an x minus 3. So if you're ready for that part, especially if you're thinking about taking more math after Algebra 2, you probably want to be thinking about stuff like this. But if Algebra 2 is it for you, if you're like, no thank you, I'm done after Algebra 2, this answer right here is totally fine, not a problem. Then I need my excluded values. This time I'm not going to make my equations. If you like to write the equations and solve them, great. But right here, x cannot be 0. Right here, x cannot be negative 2/3, which is negative 0.6 repeating. And right here, x cannot be 3. So there are 3 excluded values. You can leave this one as a negative 2/3, or you can actually do the division. Either way is fine with me. And then one more example together before you try some on your own. Yours is on the back, mine was on the other side. This one, I did add a little bit of spice to it, so there's a little extra thing that we have to notice here. And like I said, this is kind of a tricky one. So what I'm looking at here, right, the denominators, they have a thing that looks like they have it in common. But the problem is this one, it's just a 2x. This one is a 2x plus 6. So I can't just add 6 to both sides. Doesn't work that way. But what I do notice is, like when I'm making my common denominator, I can only multiply on both sides. I can't just add or subtract something. So right here, I see a common denominator, or sorry, I see a greatest common factor. So I'm going to take that one and say I have a 2, and when I factor out a 2 from a 2x, I have an x left. When I factor out a 2 from a 6, I have a 3 left. So now on this part, I have like a 2 times x. On this part, I have a 2 times an x plus 3. So in order to make the denominators match, this side needs an x plus 3 on the bottom and on the top. In order to make this side match, it has the 2, it has the x plus 3. This side needs to multiply by a letter x. And now I have an x plus 3, a 2, and an x plus 3, a 2, and an x. So now I have a common denominator. I'm going to put the 2 and the x first and the x plus 3 last. Same here, I'm going to put the 2 first, I'm going to move the x to the front and the x plus 3. Again, it doesn't have to be in the same order, but I just like when it's in the same order. Then I can do my distribute. X times x, I've got x squared. X times 3, I have 3x. X times x, x squared. X times negative 3, I have negative 3x. Now I have a common denominator, and now that I have a common denominator, I can add the tops of my fractions together. Those are called the numerators. So my denominator stays the same as it was, and then I combine the numerators. If I have an x squared plus another x squared, that goes to 2x squared. And then I have a 3x plus a negative 3x, right? So that's like a 0. So I actually don't need to write that on the top at all. So if you got to this point, right, and you say that's your answer, good. But again, for those of you who are planning to take especially pre-calculus, maybe even algebra 3, if you're going to take more math after algebra 2, basically a 2x squared is like a 2 times an x times another x. And a 2x is like a 2 times an x, but then I also have an x plus 3 on the bottom. So I see a 2 divided by a 2, that makes 1. I see an x divided by an x, that also makes 1. And so once I simplify this as much as I possibly can, I have an x on the top, I have an x plus 3 on the bottom. I can put that x plus 3 in parentheses if I want, because it was in parentheses here, but now that the 2 and the x are gone, the parentheses are not really necessary. They're extra. So if you want to do the extra part, you can say that is your answer. Again, I'm not going to do the equations for excluded values, but I need an excluded value for here. In this part, x cannot be 0. And then in this one here, x cannot be negative 3. If you still need help with excluded values, make sure that you get help, because they will be part of this section as well. All right, now we have a couple for you to try. So see if you can do those without help. There is an answer key if you want to check. And then challenge is right here. I would have to do a box and diamond first before I can figure out what my common denominator is. And right here, I would have to do a greatest common factor first before I can figure out my common denominator. So again, if you're working on box and diamonds, it's still in this chapter, so you still need to know how to do it.